from the right side of the ledger. Charlie Sykes, editor-in-chief of Right Wisconsin, co-host of WNYC Radio's Indivisible program, and an MSNBC contributor, and Hugh Hewitt, host of the Salem Radio Network and a MSNBC political analyst. Charlie, you and I had a fairly emotional conversation in this room last night about the rise of anti-Semitism. We've been asking everyone all night the general question, what's happening here? What do you think is happening?
Well, I mean, that's part of this cancer in the administration, you know, all of the games he played, the winks and the nods, and it's going to catch up with him. You know, the thing that really strikes me about these numbers is this is supposed to be the honeymoon. This is when a president accumulates the political capital that he's going to need to spend for the big issues. And while we have been distracted by all of these other things, you know, we are now 1 month in, no Obamacare, no tax cuts. The big fights are still to come on the Supreme Court, all of those things. And these numbers are not just low, but they really have to give pause to the Republicans in Congress who are looking at that 84% number, but have to realize where's the capital going to be when he really needs it.
And Hugh, the support among Republicans, 84%, that's a number. But someone decided to send these Republican members of Congress home to their districts for this break without a plan in hand. After all these years of wanting repeal and replace, they've got nothing to tell, nothing to promise these folks at these town halls.
Well, they did agree on a budget, Brian, that allows for them to use the reconciliation process to advance most of the repeal on a simple majority vote. I have to say, what Steve Kornacki was talking about, the surprise we all felt on election night, came because we disregarded contrary information. If I may give some contrary information, the stock market is up 12.5% since Donald Trump won election. The national security team he assembled, General now Secretary Mattis, General now Secretary Kelly, General McMaster, now at the National Security Agency, Mike Pompeo, former House Intelligence Committee member at the CIA, Dan Coates, former ambassador to Journey and senator from Indiana over at the DNI, and on the domestic side, Tom Price at HHS and Scott Pruitt at EPA, and above all, Judge Gorsuch to the Supreme Court. There is a reason the Republican base loves Donald Trump's first month and why it will be a surprise to many people that many people do love his first month. Now, we know his errors. I was very critical of his calling a federal judge so-called. That's an attack on an equal branch. It's not acceptable. I was critical of calling any member of the journalistic community an enemy of the state. I've never met one who wasn't a patriot. It was a botched-out rollout of the EO. But I think up until now, the only positive thing I've heard said about Donald Trump was by Ambassador McFaul's comment on General McMaster. And I think we fall into the danger of the echo chamber. He's had a very rough and uneven month, but with a lot of mountains and a lot of valleys. And I remind you of the June 7th, 1993 Time magazine cover. Bill Clinton, a little tiny Bill Clinton, under the enormous headline, the incredible shrinking president. First months don't tell us anything. The personnel choices he made tell us he's off to a very good staffing start. And if that cabinet had been known, he would have won an even bigger upset. It was already the biggest upset in American political history. So that's the Contra case.
Well, a couple points to make in behalf of your argument about how he's doing with the base. I'm looking at the Gallup poll. Apples and apples here. It was 35% right before the election. He won. Right. So people aren't saying they're for him. It's the old Bradley effect. People aren't willing to tell pollsters how they're going to go. He gets 46%. 90% of Republicans, it's hidden in the information we got from Steve there, 90% of Republicans support him now. The 84% includes leaning Republican. But actually self-identified Republican, self-identified 90% right now. And his numbers are better now, 42% than they were when people elected him president. So I don't understand all this hand-wringing here. I mean, it seems like the base, despite all the mishigas of the last 30 days, the hell that's going on, the craziness, and Chris, they're still with him, and I want to know why they're sticking with it despite all the bad news.
Well, first of all, the Supreme Court, you cannot overstate how big that was.
They like Gorsuch.
They very much like Gorsuch. The cabinet...
Because he's Christian conservative? Is that what they like about him?
I just think he's a solid choice, you know, and this was the big question. Was he going to actually name a real conservative? This was a huge issue in the November election. This is huge for them. The cabinet gets high marks among conservatives. So some of the optics, you know, again. And, of course, Donald Trump has also understood that in order to play to his base, he has to pick the enemies. His attacks on the media are playing to the base. You know, but on the other hand, look, this 1 month is not sustainable. It is not sustainable. Donald Trump is not going to change. And yes, you can look for things that are positive. And the cabinet is, I think, relatively solid. But there's chaos in the White House.
Quickly, do you think that last week's press conference was good or bad for him with the base?
Oh, the base loved it. But at some point, he's got to expand beyond the base.
Hugh, do you agree about last Thursday? Because I thought that was the one that there was two ways to look at that. The mirror had two faces. A lot of us Mad Hatter's Tea Party or the Headless Horseman, pick your metaphor. But obviously his peeps liked it.
Well, when he leaned forward and he said, nobody believes you, speaking generally about the American media, he said, the people don't believe you anymore. That resonates. The only people with higher negatives than Donald Trump among the general Gallup is us. And I look at the map over my left shoulder and my very...
if the American people had to rescue us or Congress out of a pit of quicksand, I actually think our chances would be pretty good.
Yeah. You know, they'd say, how much time you got?
Exactly.
Speaking of that, we ain't got any more left in this segment. Our thanks to Charles and Hugh. When we